Good morning, members. That's 10 o'clock. I'm now going to call the meeting to order. And just a reminder that the meeting will be recorded and available for repeated viewing on the Council's website. Could I ask IT colleagues to start the recording, please? Thank you very much. Could I ask Aileen to call for the Sedrin and intimate any apologies, please?
Good morning, members. If you could confirm your attendance when I call your name. Councillor Barton.
Here, Aileen, thanks.
Councillor McGee.
Yep.
Councillor Friel.
I'm here, Elaine. Thank
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Sangster.
you. Thanks.
I've got apologies from Councillor Mabin. Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning. Yeah.
I've got apologies from Councillor Crawford. Councillor Watts.
Present.
I've got apologies from Councillor Filson. Councillor Hogg.
Here, thanks.
And Councillor Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aileen. Members are going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that is declarations of interest. Don't see any in the room or online. So thank you very much. So we'll move straight on to item 2 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0033/AMC PPP. This is approval of matters specified in condition 1 part 2. C, levels. H, trees and hedging to be retained. And I, drainage. Condition 3A, junction layouts. Condition 14A, landscape framework. Condition 18, phasing plan. And 19A, peat management plan of planning consent 24/0220/PPP at vacant field located to the south of the B7081 at north of Moorfield Industrial Park, Kilmarnock by East Ayrshire Council. I'm going to hand over to Craig Thomas to take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. As the Chair said, we have before us an application for approval of matters specified in conditions, which is AMC PPP, imposed on planning permission in principle reference 24/0220/PPP. That was approved at Planning Committee in December 2024. That involved the construction of a centre of excellence for food production, class 4 and 5 units, roads, drainage, landscaping, etc. on vacant land at Moorfield. The conditions sought to be discharged as part of this AMC PPP application relate only to the following, which has been mentioned by the Chair: site levels, trees, hedging to be retained, drainage, junction layouts, archaeological works, landscape framework, phasing and peat management. These conditions are listed in detail in paragraph 7, page 5 of your papers. I'll just show some slides, and I've added some plans and details in as well, just for clarity and information. This first plan is obviously the location plan. You can see the application site just south of the Crosshouse Hospital, the Crosshouse settlement to the west. To the south is the existing Moorfield estate. To the east, you have some vacant land with the Annandale Works, and then beyond that, the housing at Fardale Hill. Yeah, next slide. Great. Sorry, people.
Just got a slight technical delay, so.
Oh, you have to scroll. Again, that's just a zoomed in slide showing the application site boundary relevant to Crosshouse Hospital, etc. This slide is an image of the landscaping framework. We can see substantial planting to the northeast boundary, which is quite a visible perspective of the sites. You have the central landscape area with path network and it shows an avenue of trees along the central spine road. You can also see the 4 SUDS areas to the northwest, along one on the northern boundary and 2 on the eastern side. They'll be planted with wildflower planting. Next that's the more detailed plan of the central landscape area. You can see the path network. There'll be seating provided, quite a substantial amount of planting to make an attractive environment. These are more detailed areas, just showing the SUDS. That one's located to the northwest of the site, near the roundabout with Crosshouse Hospital, and a section along the northern boundary, which it shows your wildflower meadows, hedgerows, etc. to be planted. Again, that's a further detail of the central area. There's showing the path network, the SUDS, seating areas, tree planting, structural woodland planting. These show the northeastern corner of the site and the northern part of the boundary. Again, there's a extensive woodland planting in this area, tree planting, wildflower planting, all just to enhance the visual appearance of the development and enhance biodiversity as well. And this slide shows the revised phasing plan. It was originally 4 phases. It's now gone down to 3. The orange section, the spine road, you can see the SUDS, the main landscaping, some access roads there into the B1, B2, B5 development. They're all part of phase 1. Phase 2 is the purple bluey colour to the northwest, and then the green is phase 3. This is the plan showing the junction, signalised junction, new junction on the eastern boundary to access the site via the central spine road. And this shows the new arm off the roundabout at the northwestern part of the site. That's the roundabout that provides access to Crosshouse. You can see the arm, new arm off that roundabout to access the site that will link the spine road. And this plan, it looks quite intimidating, but the green areas are areas of fill across the site, whilst the red is cut. Obviously, the SUDS areas show areas of cut, while the fill, primarily the southern and central part of the site, it's quite undulating in those sections of the site, and it will require some fill, and that just gives an idea of how it will work. And the final plan is the drainage layout, just showing the 4 SUDS areas that will connect surface water to the existing infrastructure. And I'll just show some photos. This one's taken on the eastern boundary of the site, looking up towards Kilmarnock Road. The hedge, the shrub there in the middle is approximately where the new access will be located. Again, this shows pretty much there's a field access there. That's where the new access will be. That's taken from the roundabout at the top of Kilmarnock Road, looking back towards the site in a westerly direction. And this is the roundabout at Crosshouse Hospital, looking back towards the site. And the next slide will show the approximate location where that hedging is, where the new access arm will be into the site off the roundabout. And that was the final slide. I'll just leave it on one of the images. Turning back to the report, no objections were received from consultees and no letters of representation were received. The relevant policies of the development plan for those specific conditions as part of this application are listed in paragraphs 17 to 19 on page 9 of the papers, and the primary issues in the assessment are also listed in paragraph 23 on page 10. A detailed assessment of each condition against the relevant development plan policies is provided at paragraphs 25 to 70. And overall, the details submitted to discharge the specific conditions were deemed to be satisfactory and comply with the relevant policies of the development plan as detailed within the report. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the single condition on page 19 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Craig. But before I hand it over, I think one of the main points that was raised at the planning permission and principles application was we want to ensure there was a reduction in any impact in Chris Hospital. So I welcome that the construction traffic will be entering and leaving the site for the B7064. But what I do see is the construction management plan will be undertaken under delegated powers. I think we all know there's a few improvement plans going on come out at Town Centre just now, and I'm looking at the Palace Theatre. There's a construction management plan in place there. So can I encourage our colleagues to take in a whole of the town effect of the traffic flow, because we know people will change the routes back to and from work to try and avoid any delays round about the Palace Theatre. So it'd be good if we get a full understanding of the whole traffic flow and make sure that this construction management plan helps reduce any congestion within the town centre. Now, I'm not sure if it would be worthwhile bringing our colleagues in at this point before I hand it over.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we can certainly do that. When we look at the construction traffic management plan in detail, they should provide routing plans for their vehicles in and out of the site, including from the sort of trunk road. And we can look at that and check, the flow through the town centre is not going to be adversely affected as well.
I really appreciate that. So members, I'm going to hand it over for any questions, points of clarification. Councillor McGee.
I appreciate that the access is going to take traffic away, construction traffic away for the roundabout immediately outside Chris Hospital. I was just wondering, is there going to be work done at that roundabout once this site's completed? Because traffic will be coming out onto that roundabout, I assume, onto the roundabout at Chris Hospital. It's quite a difficult roundabout to see over the tapper when folk are getting into the hostel while you're waiting to come out. And I think that just might be exacerbated. I was just wanting to ask a question about that. And also, I see the layout there and all the lovely planting and all the rest of it. But what happens when all that planting needs maintenance? Who maintains that? Kind of, if I drive up the tappage in Finney Street now, I just see weeds in front of me. Again, that was planting, but nobody maintains it. So it's just weeds. So who's going to maintain all that planting? Thank you.
There was as part of the landscape framework, there were details of maintenance, and it indicated the initial responsibility will be the appointed contractor, whilst the ongoing responsibility for landscaping would be the responsibility of the developer or owner of the land. You have those, there's the 5 plots to be developed by the parties, so landscaping within those sites will be the responsibility of the owner developer, and the other areas with the ongoing maintenance will be lie with the developer owner of that land.
With that, Councillor McGee.
But the roundabout, any improvements to the roundabout in the future?
So the roundabout itself, the new arm of the roundabout has been designed in accordance with national guidelines, as has the junction layout of the B-class road. There aren't any plans to change the roundabout itself in terms of the other legs, but the arm that's taken into the development has been designed in accordance with guidelines.
Members, any further questions? As you can see in page 3, the recommendation, it's recommended that this application for approval of matters specifying conditions The planning permission in principle be approved, subject to conditions listed at the end of this report. Are we happy to approve? Yeah. I think that was unanimously agreed. Thank you very much. The members, moving on to item 3 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 24/003/S36. And this is a consultation under section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989 relating to the proposed Penkle wind farm extension, which is comprising 5 wind turbines up to a 149.9 metre to blade tip height. And this is at Penkle Wind Farm, Penkle Farm, Afton Road, Mossmark, New Cumnock. It's in East Ayrshire, K18 4PR by Penklo Wind Energy Limited. So I'm going to hand over to David Wilson to take us through this one.
Thanks, Chair. Morning. The purpose of this report is to present a consultation under Section 36 of the Electricity Act for consideration by Planning Committee. The application site is located off Afton Road to the south of New Cumnock. The development comprises a 22.5 megawatt wind farm extension to the under construction Penklo wind farm and comprises of 5 turbines up to 149.9 metres, hard standings, an extension of a consented borrow pit and around 2.5 kilometres of new track for an anticipated operational period of around 40 years, all is set out at paragraphs 3 to 8 of your papers. Some planning history is set out at paragraphs 10 and 11, noting the consented Penklo wind farm and subsequently consented abnormal load access track and borrow pit, all of which are implemented and under construction or complete. Consultation responses to the Council and to Scottish Government are set out at paragraphs 12 to 38, noting that 2 aviation consultees currently maintain an objection, but that no other consultee has raised an objection, subject to the use of appropriate conditions to control various matters. 123 representations from third parties have been submitted to the Energy Consents Unit, details of which are set out at paragraphs 39 and 40. Prior to moving on to the assessment, I'll just share some details, some visual context and talk you through that, if you bear with me. This is the site location and context, so you're not just New Cumnock to the north. The site outlined in brown in that slide, in the area of forest just to the south of that is where the Penklo wind farm is located. And just a slightly wider one for context in terms of the position. This is the proposed layout plan. It shows the existing access track as a black line running through the central section of the application red line boundary. The 5 turbines and new track come off of that existing track and head towards the southwest direction. Penklo wind farm is shown outlined blue, adjacent to and south of the development. And as mentioned, that's previously under construction, and members on the site visit yesterday will have noticed that some of those turbines are fully erected and others are underway at the moment with towers visible in the surrounding area. This slide is the zone of theoretical visibility. The dark blue represents where all turbines are theoretically visible, and this doesn't include any trees, vegetation or houses. So this is kind of bare earth type visibility, noting that the kind of main visibility is surrounding the site and also to the north towards Cumnock before becoming more fragmented thereafter. Just need to take you through a handful of the viewpoints now, members. So these next slides are from viewpoint 2 at Connell View in New Cumnock. It's around 4.25 kilometres from the nearest turbine. On this slide here, the turbines proposed are in blue in the central section of the wire line. The green turbines are the consented or constructed turbines, which in this view comprise primarily Penklo towards the left, and Enoch Hill and South Kyle towards the right. The Enoch Hill 2 turbines, which is 2 single turbines, are shown red centrally and behind the proposed development. They were at application stage at the time these visuals were completed, but they've now been consented, having come to this committee a number of months ago. And just going on to the photo montage of that view, noting that the Enoch Hill turbines are not shown here, but they are now consented. So if these were being redone, they would be shown. You can see the development centrally located there, with Penclow towards the left, and Enoch Hill towards the right. Just moving on to the next viewpoint now. This is viewpoint 3 at Newcomnock Railway Bridge, around 5.8 kilometres northeast of the development. This view is a wider southern view towards the Afton Valley and southern upland hills, with the wireline showing the development overlapping with Penclow and Enoch Hill 2 wind farms, but with a filling of the current gap between those two schemes that would otherwise be visible from this location. This is viewpoint 5 at Burnside on the B741, around 3 kilometres north of the development. It shows visibility of towers and blades, predominantly of 3 turbines, with 2 turbines largely terrain shielded behind the houses and landscape at Burnside. Penclow Wind Farm occupies some of the field of view in the green, behind the extension turbines, with Enoch Hill towards the right and western part of the view. This is viewpoint 6 at Daljig Road, some 5.8 kilometres north. This view gives a wider view of the hills to the south, and the wireline shows the varied developments located on this area, with schemes in green existing or consented, and the turbines located across the front of the central portion of the view, largely visible in front of the Penclow turbines, which form the immediate backdrop thereafter. And the final viewpoint on the slides today, this is viewpoint 8 on the A76. It's around 6.75 kilometres north, near to the entrance to the Lochside Hotel. Again, it's a wider wireframe provided at the southern uplands, with the eastern proposed turbines sitting just in front of the Penclow development, with the western turbines filling the gap to the Enoch Hill 2 turbines shown red centrally. And the final slide, members, this is a cumulative location plan showing a range of development out to 20 kilometres at all development stages, from operational to potential future schemes that are currently at scoping. The proposed turbines sit at the northern end of the southern upland turbine mass, which stretches significantly southward into Dumfries and Galloway, between the A713 road to the west and the A76 to the east. Just stop sharing here, members, and take you through the rest of the presentation. So just turning now to the assessment. Whilst the development plan does not have primacy in section 36 developments, it is a useful and logical assessment tool to base our assessment against. Key matters of interest are set out from paragraph 41 to 138, noting that strong in-principle support for such developments is gained from national and local policies in respect of renewable energy generation and positive effects on carbon emissions over the lifetime of the development. Whilst the output is modest at 22.5 megawatts, it remains nonetheless a valuable contribution to Scottish Government targets for renewable energy generation. There are significant landscape and visual effects from the development, predominantly in the local area. Generally, the application turbines will appear more prominent in the Penclow development, being in front of the Penclow turbines and closer to Newcomnock and its surrounds, and will also add to the cumulative wind farm effects on this area. However, these additional effects are not considered to be unacceptable, noting that the turbines are mostly visually red with the existing and consented developments of Penclow, Enoch Hill and Enoch Hill 2 in this same area of landscape, due to their consistent height and frequent visual overlap with these schemes, resulting in a reasonably coherent visual appearance along the southern skyline. There are no unacceptable impacts on a range of different matters, including biodiversity and ecology and the water environment, often subject to conditions, including, for example, a habitat management plan that will provide for a large area of bog restoration, upland grassland restoration and tree planting, as well as private water supply conditions to secure monitoring and mitigation. There are no unacceptable impacts on communities or individual dwellings by way of visual impact, with no property adjudged to receive any overbearing visual impacts. Noise impacts can be kept within acceptable levels, subject to controlling conditions, and shadow flicker is unlikely to occur but can be mitigated via planning conditions if this does occur. There will be net economic benefits nationally and locally from the construction and operation of the wind farm, although the supporting information on how this and local skills and employment will be maximised has not been well demonstrated in the application, but securing the detail of how this will be maximised to comply with planning policy could be achieved through planning condition. There will be some adverse construction-related effects on traffic and transport and those living adjacent to the main access route, predominantly those along Afton Road. The extension proposal uses the existing abnormal load access to Penclow, meaning a much reduced length of Afton Road is required for construction traffic, and also avoids the traffic movements associated with constructing a new access route. In addition, borrow pits will provide stone on site to further reduce movements. Appropriate controls can be put in place to reduce effects, including a construction traffic management plan and delivery and working hours controls. Further, in recognising the potential for more than one development to be utilising Afton Road, a cumulative controlling condition for construction works using the Afton Road is proposed in the same style as the Penclow wind farm and is attached to other consents. Aviation matters have not been resolved with consultees at this time, but limited weight is given to this in the consideration of the consultation response, and it would be for ministers to be satisfied that the development adequately addresses these matters. Finally, it is noted that development is similar to schemes that have previously been refused at this site. For the reasons explained from paragraph 130, the development is considered to have largely overcome these previous concerns, noting in particular that the baseline and appearance of wind farms in this skyline has changed substantially. The two closest turbines of those schemes to Newcomnott and Afton Road have been deleted, and that the planning policy position in respect of renewables is generally more generous. As noted within the conclusions at paragraphs 139 to 144, whilst the additional landscape visual and cumulative landscape visual effects of development in particular are noted, these are not considered to be of such magnitude that they would be unacceptable in themselves or in balance with the wider benefits of the development, be of such adverse impact as to make the whole proposal unacceptable. It is considered that subject to the imposition of planning conditions and a legal agreement, the development is considered to be compliant overall with the development plan, and most other material considerations are generally supportive of the development. Legal and financial risk implications are set out in paragraphs 145 to 150, noting that the applicant would be expected to enter into a legal agreement with the council to secure a planning monitoring officer and a financial guarantee. The applicant has agreed to this in principle. It is noted that should the council raise an objection to development, this would likely trigger a public local inquiry, and participation in such a process would be necessary. The recommendation is set out at paragraph 2. Members will note the recommendation is to object unless the conditions at the end of the report from page 56 to 90 are attached to any consent and a legal agreement is concluded. This is a different approach to a recommendation from previously, largely born out of recent unsatisfactory experiences negotiating planning conditions with the Energy Consents Unit of the Scottish Government and not achieving the condition wording or the actual conditions that we consider to be necessary to properly and fully control the development and to mitigate impacts. We consider that this approach further strengthens our position to secure these matters, and if ministers do not give effect to our concerns and use these conditions, the council would in effect object to the development and would therefore likely trigger a public inquiry process. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions on any of the foregoing.
Thanks, David, and thanks for the clarification and the recommendation. That's really helpful. I think it's important that local members can get their say in a local planning department and apply these conditions. So members, I'm going to hand over for any questions, points of clarification. Councillor Lennox.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank David and his colleague for taking us out yesterday on the site visit. That was really helpful just to get on the ground and see things in the flesh, so to speak. Essentially, what we have here, or what we're going to have in the very near future, is something akin to a Whiteley-sized wind farm development. And if we had crystal balls and could see what the outcome of that was going to be at the outset, then we might have balked a wee bit about the several recent applications that we've approved. It's got to be said that there is growing discontent among the local communities in terms of a significant number of people think we're reaching saturation point in terms of wind farms in these areas. personally speaking, I tend to agree with officers on this occasion. But it's got to be said there is growing discontent. I do appreciate as well that it's not a material planning consideration. But there's a wider impact in terms of the communities that are impacted. It's not just New Cumnock that's impacted. A lot of these, a lot of the deliveries come along the trunk road through Mauchline, for example. And the likes of Mauchline's getting severely disrupted all hours of the day. Previously, North Kyle, for example, kept their wind farm deliveries to evening times when the road was quieter. Some of the more recent deliveries are coming at all times of the day, even during peak hours, for example. So it's just got to go in the record as well that there is a wider impact. It's not just New Cumnock that's impacted, but I'll leave it at that at the moment, Chair, thanks. But at this stage, I would say I'd be happy to go with the recommendation of officers in terms of the way it's worded with the conditions. I'd be happy to go with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. I'm going to bring in Councillor Botts and then Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, this is the local community in New Cumnock is becoming very discontented with the amount of wind farms that are in the area. The cumulative effect on New Cumnock as these wind farms are getting closer and seem to be getting closer is upsetting the local communities. I notice that from the representations, we do have 3 of the community councils from the south of the area make representation within this report. However, only one of them is from within Ward 8, and even that is about 7 to 9 miles from the site. The actual community council, which is New Cumnock Community Council, hasn't actually responded. The visual impact, the cumulative effects, and the character of the landscape of New Cumnock is being devastated by these wind farms. And we do need to get to a stage where we, in a sense, I think we do start to issue that we do need to say enough is enough. There's enough there. My other major concern is that going to this application, these 5 turbines are far, far too close to the village. The visual impact from the village will be really quite substantial. So, Chair, I completely object to this application by the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Kyle. Oh, sorry, I've got Councillor Hogg. My apologies for next.
Thank you, Chair. I would just be interested to know currently how many wind turbines are in that area of the Doon Valley and New Cumnock area currently. How many are planned? Because I know we do have Knockkippen, which is planned outside Patna. Skentooth, I think, is still at the Scottish Government. Essentially, we could end up with a wind tunnel down through the Doon Valley. And by stealth, it seems areas that have already got planning permission seem to be adding 2, 3 on and adding to what they already have. As regards community benefit, although this is not part of planning, it should be noted that community benefit is not equitable throughout the Doon Valley. There are areas who receive no money in the Doon Valley from the 9cc. So not everybody benefits from the wind turbines within the Doon Valley. But I would be interested to know currently how many turbines are in the area and how many more are due to come on.
I don't have off the top of my head an exact number. Councillor Hogg, we can find that out for you and give you an estimation. It is obviously changing as schemes come forward or schemes get built out and different things. we obviously seeing a number of schemes being built, Enoch, Penclow, North Kyle, have all largely been built out. So they're all the large schemes. South Kyle's already there. That's nearly 50 turbines on there. There are some more schemes to come forward. So it depends just if you define exactly where you want us to give you those numbers for. Depends on where the boundaries are, because obviously we go into South Ayrshire, we go into Dumfries and Galloway, but I couldn't answer that accurate for you right now in terms of what the total numbers are, and we also need to define exactly where they would be, but we can calculate that for you post committee if you're interested in information, if you define where you want those numbers for, so that we can work that out for
Absolutely,
you.
that would be beneficial. And yeah, I'll give you the areas that we're looking at.
Okay,
Thank you.
happy to do that.
Through you, Chair, as well, and I appreciate the question that was posed by yourself, Councillor Hogg. Obviously, we have this particular application before us that we require to consider on its particular merits, and I think certainly my planning colleagues would also reinforce the view that we continue to assess and review each application that's coming forward, either as a planning application or as a consultation response from the Energy Consent Unit. And we are acutely aware of comments being made by members about the number of wind farms down there. And we also continue, not only within the planning service, but also through those external consultants that we employ, Ironside Farah, excuse me, where we continue to look at that cumulative impact. And it may be that, while we will continue to treat these applications on their individual merits, we will continue to take on board the comments that are made, and we will continue to assess whether or not there comes a point where, as you say, we as a council need to object. So we are acutely aware of the concerns that members and others are raising regarding that matter. The other point was, I note the point being made about community benefits. As members will be aware, they are not material planning considerations, so we can't take them into account in assessing and determining these types of application. But I take on board the comments from yourself, Councillor Hogg, regarding that.
Thanks, Craig. I'm going to bring in Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, Chair. Just my own opinion. I don't see the problem with adding these other windmills or generators. The only people I know is objecting is the people that stay in Artham Road. They never objected when the lorries were coming down with the trees for the forestry. It's only because I think it's greed because one house and they're jealous. They're not getting a cut the same as the rest. I don't see a problem with this because you've got, when kids are growing up, they're going to be growing up with these round about them, so nobody will object at a later stage. I think it should go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kyle. Members, any further questions? Now, Councillor McGee.
It wasn't really a question as such, Chair, just mere a comment. I mean, I think it's been pretty well discussed at the site visit and the meeting before, the pre-planning meeting, and the cumulative effect has been raised, and I think on the site visit, the officers explained that very well. I still do think, you come that, it reminds me of an old film where tall guys in red tunics were at Rupert Drift and they were locking up in the holes around them, and there was maybe one guy there, and then the next thing there were thousands of them. So that's what the turbines looked to me like on that site visit round about Newcomnock. So there definitely is a cumulative effect, and I think it might well be true what Councillor Kyle's saying, that younger folk might well get used to the sight of them and think that's the way to go, green energy, etc., etc. But I think there is a cumulative effect on the community. and for road users, safety of pedestrians, etc., etc. But I think this paper has been well laid out, and what our objection would be if they don't meet the conditions. And I think that was the point, and that would be, myself, I'd be happy to go with what's contained in the paper.
But before I just sum up where we are, we'll just exhaust any questions. So, to keep me right here, Craig, so with Councillor Lennox originally said that you were minded to approve, is that right, Councillor?
Apologies, Chair. I'm minded to go with the recommendation offers on this occasion. Thank you.
And I think, and we had Councillor Watts who outright objection, and I think Councillor Kyle, was you going to second? You said you've approved, so you'd be the seconding. Councillor Lennox. So, Councillor Watts, you would need a seconder. No.
On that basis, without seconder, Chair, obviously Councillor Watt's motion would fall.
And there's no other. Yeah, Councillor Watts.
Can I just make sure that my name is recorded in the minutes, that obviously as normal, that I fully object to this. Thank you.
Yep. Noted. So the decision of the committee is seen by the recommendation in page 2.
So Chair, on that basis, obviously we just have the motion which has been seconded, which is to move the recommendation. We don't have a contrary motion, so on that basis, the decision of the committee is to move the recommendation.
Exactly. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, members. We'll just move swiftly on to item 4 on the agenda, and this is the compliance monitoring update of major developments and environmental projects. I think, Barry, I think it's yourself that's going to take us through that.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So this, I'll take you through the report to the recommendations, and the compliance report covers the period from January to the end of June. But just to note that for some sites, there have been some movements since then. So there are updates up until very recently within the report and also within the presentation. So the recommendation is just briefly to note the compliance status of each of the projects, to note that formal enforcement action has been undertaken during this reporting period, but that most of the sites have required no formal action, and otherwise note the contents of the report. So just to move on to some of the sites. So firstly, starting with the open cast coal restoration sites. As you will be aware, the council restoration sites are coming to an end, with only one site remaining. So this is Charmerston, which is on Forestry Land, Scotland land, and is also within the North Kyle Wind Farm site area. And it's for that reason that site restoration has been delayed, because we didn't want to undertake works before the wind farm construction took place. So whilst the wind farm has been under construction, many of the restoration aims that the council had have also been fulfilled through the wind farm construction, including things like the narrowing of the Hall Road and some other works as well. Around the end of last year, the opportunity arose for the contractor, Jones Brothers, to undertake peat placement works for the council using excess peat from the wind farm construction. This was done under a restoration services agreement. Following this, which was carried out very successfully, the council entered into a further restoration agreement with Jones Brothers to carry out the remaining restoration works. So these works commenced at the beginning of this year and are now nearing completion. The works have generally been the reshaping of tips, regrading and infilling of water bodies, generally to create a more natural looking landscape and to allow for Forestry Land Scotland to place soils and use for forestry purposes in future. The works will also help to facilitate some of the aims of the North Kyle Forest Master Plan and will enhance public access following construction. And I think some members may have seen some of the works that took place at site visit earlier on in the year. A completion report will come before members later on in the year, and that will fully explain the restoration undertaken along with photographs and so on. Just moving on to some of the other sites. So major developments. We've got 2 in Kilmarnock, where the enforcement issues have now largely been resolved. These were in relation to landscaping, open space at Whole House Road and surface water runoff at North Craig Farm. The next site is Afton Braes at Rig Road. And members will be aware from previous reports of the ongoing non-compliance issues at this development. The ongoing breaches relate to issues of non-compliance with landscaping and surface water drainage conditions, fencing, non-completion of a link road with Eric Ross Way, and the unauthorised deposition of soils. Paragraph 12 of the report notes that enforcement notice have been served on the developer in respect of those matters. At the time of writing the report, notices had not been served, but it was anticipated that they would be served prior to the meeting today. However, the drafting of the notices has been complex, to say the least, and although now drafted, a final legal check is being carried out to ensure that they fully comply with the legal requirements and that they are served on the correct parties. So this is just to make sure that they aren't quashed on some technicality. It is now anticipated that notices will be served within the next week, and a briefing note will be issued to local members in advance of this. So moving on now to the electricity generating stations. Firstly, North Kyle Wind Farm. These works are almost complete, I believe. Most turbines are now erected and reinstatement of temporary areas have been ongoing. And the works have been largely compliant with the plans and conditions. Whiteley Wind Farm, the work has been ongoing to finalise the bond quantum valuation for each council area, and this was received at the end of the reporting period and is now under consideration. The Kilmarnock South Battery Energy Storage System is nearing completion and commissioning and is largely compliant. Penclow Wind Farm, there were complaints in early 2025 with regard to traffic issues on Afton Road. These have now been largely resolved. There was a lessons learned session with the developer to address these issues. Moving on to quarries. So you'll note Garpo Quarry, we still await the review of the habitat monitoring and bird management and bird monitoring plan. This is still in the process of being reviewed in consultation with Nature Scotland RSPB, and a technical working group meeting is planned to try and address this matter. Dareduff Quarry, enabling works at the quarry, which is between Dunlop and Nielsen, commenced in 2024. So shortly after the commencement, a complaint was received from a nearby property, which is just over the boundary in East Renfrewshire Council area, about impacts to the private water supply there. And this was a complete loss of the water supply. So there is a requirement on the developer or the operator there to investigate the loss and mitigate where required. The operator did do this and came to the conclusion that the quarry could not have impacted on the private water supply because of the geology and hydrogeology, etc. in that area. We still received complaints. We're also in liaison with the East Renfrewshire Council's Environmental Health Officer there, who also had concerns about a potential impact from the quarry. So we engaged our Ironside Farrer as an independent compliance monitoring consultant to have a look at this, to look at the operator's conclusions and also look at the site and come to their own conclusions. So they were in clear agreement with the operator that the quarry itself was not impacting on the private water supply of this property. So this is more likely due to maintenance issues with the private water supply, and the owner of that was advised accordingly, and they are also in liaison with East Renfrewshire Council about this and getting upgrades to their system. Also in February this year, it was found that the quarry had commenced operations prior to road widening works that were required to provide a ghost island right-hand turn. This is required by condition 26 of the planning permission. As an alternative to the service of a stop notice, the operator agreed to stop all works voluntarily while they undertook the widening works. This was done within a few weeks and completed and allowed the recommencement of operations. It's also noted that the first blast at the quarry took place in advance of the blasting method statement being approved. There was a blasting method statement in, so one had been submitted to us, but it hadn't been approved at that point, and it seemed to be a bit of confusion or misunderstanding from the developer's side. However, that has now been approved and it allows blasting to take place in accordance with this document. In June 2025, we received several complaints from people in and around Dunlop regarding HGVs allegedly using unauthorised routes in Dunlop and the surrounding minor roads. The operator was approached regarding this and asked to produce evidence. Well, first of all, asked if it was vehicles related to the quarry, and if not, if they could provide evidence to show this. We didn't get a particularly great answer from the operator, who said it wasn't anything to do with the quarry, but was the evidence we got back wasn't particularly helpful. However, since then we haven't received any more complaints, and we hope anyway that this has now been addressed just by us being in contact with the operator, if it was indeed them or their HGVs that were causing the issue. Tinker Hill Quarry, we received a request from a member of the public asking for tracking information of the HGVs from Tinker Hill Quarry, because there was a concern that they were leaving the site in convoy, and there is a restriction on the development for HGVs doing this. So when we asked the operator for this information, they basically held their hands up and said, we recognise there is actually an issue with HGVs leaving in convoy from the site. They previously tried to operate a system where they were leaving at least 3 minutes between vehicles. So in response to this, they implemented a series of robust measures which are set out in Appendix 5, and they include a traffic light system and various other things which are clearly very well thought out and robust in order to prevent this from happening in future. So since then we haven't received any complaints, so we are hopeful that this has resolved the issue. The final site is Garlaff, a landfill site, which is it ceased landfilling a couple of years ago. You might recall that there was a Section 42 application approved in March, and this allowed for the restoration of the site, basically as it is. So the regrading of the current void, just to allow the landfill site to be finished off, basically. So these works have been taking place while the Section 75 agreement is being negotiated. So that's all from me in terms of compliance. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Members are going to open up for any questions. Councillor Lennox.
Thanks again, Chair. Just a couple of points, a couple of observations from myself. In respect to the open cast restorations, some of the works that have been done in terms of the open cast restorations is to be commended. We witnessed some of those restorations when we were out on the site visit yesterday, and it's practically impossible to tell where some of these pits have been, etc., etc. Plus, we've had a couple of visits up onto the North Kyle wind farm site, and the changes up there are are excellent to say the least. So well done there. In respect to item 25, Tin Corn Hill Quarry, I'm constantly getting complaints about HGVs, excessive speeds, travelling in convoys. For my mind, I think we need to start thinking about altering the route of these HGVs instead of going down through the conservation area within Sorn and over the bridge towards Catrin. I'm minded to amend the traffic route for the quarry up towards the trunk road near Muirkirk. It's a longer way round, but it means not going through Sorn, for example. The people that stay in Catrin Road and Sorn are they're up to their necks in HGVs on a daily basis. They're rumbling up and down there constantly. I've been dealing with other colleagues in respect to drain covers. Separate issue, I might add, it's the developer that's been causing issues in Catrin Road. And while I'm on the subject, I've got the mic, so I might as well say it. The developer, the Rig Road developer, has got developments elsewhere in East Ayrshire, and I think we need to keep a close eye on this particular developer because of some of the issues that have been caused. There's issues starting to appear in Sorn as well on Catrin Road for the same developer. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, but thanks very much for giving me the mic.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. I totally agree with the restoration work. We were up North Kelt, it's absolutely superb, and the peat management's been great. So, Councillor Watts.
Yes, thank you, Marie, for the report. I am extremely pleased to see the progress on the Afton Braes. We've had so many problems and so many issues over the last 2 years with that development site. So to find that we are getting to that stage now where we really are almost putting the thumb screws on to make sure the developer knows what the standard is. And I think that's really important. And going to Councillor Lennox's point, you know, this developer does have sites around East Ayrshire, and he, you know, we cannot let him get away with things because it would just get worse. It's still a case over there, as we know, that all of these haven't been done, but the residents are still now jumping up and down about the road system. He has contracted people to come and do tarmacking of the roads, but it's almost like half a job because they've now got all the ironwork sticking up, which I know of 2 constituents of mine who have actually burst tyres on them. So there are issues, but no, I am really pleased to see where we are with that. And I'd want to thank the officers for all their support over the last 2 years. Thank you.
I think it's something that all the local members have raised on numerous occasions, and I'm glad to hear that you'll be kept up to speed with the information that's going out to residents, potentially. Members, any other questions? No. So the recommendations on page 92, paragraph 2, happy to go with that. Thank you very much. The members are on to item 5 in the agenda, and it's the update report on progress of planning applications which have recommended for approval, which are subject to the conclusion of an appropriate legal agreement and or are legacy planning applications in East Ayrshire. So, David, I think you're taking us through this.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's a bit reasonably short presentation just to summarise the report. So this is a biannual report on progress with applications subject to legal agreement or legacy planning applications, and the report's covering the period of January to June 2025. For this period, paragraphs 7 and 8 and table 1 shows that there are 9 applications awaiting conclusion of a legal agreement, which is 2 more than the last period. 2 applications were concluded or withdrawn in that period, but 4 new applications requiring a legal agreement have been added in this period. All are considered to be progressing satisfactorily. In In respect of legacy applications, paragraphs 9 to 11 and Appendix Table 2 show that there are 18 legacy applications, which is 4 less than the last reporting period. 10 legacy applications were cleared in the reporting period, and 6 new applications have come on. Many of these applications are under processing agreements, which project manages the application to revise timescales, and most of the applications are progressing generally quite well. Members will note from Table 2 that a number of the remaining legacy cases have also been determined early in the next reporting period. So this is a snapshot for the end of June, but actually since then and up to this point, a number of those applications have actually been determined and cleared, so it should be even less. So members just asked to note the content of the report and the actions on each of the applications set out in the tables, and that's essentially allowed continued progress on each legacy and legal agreement application. Thanks.
Thanks, David. I'm going to open up, and I know Councillor Maitland's want to come in.
Thank you, David. And I think there's been a little bit of progress. I think you know what I'm going to talk about here. It's page 103 and it's the Bridge House Hill Road development. The all council ward members and ARA and some other officers are meeting next week. And before I just go on to make a few points, I'd like to particularly thank ARA for their help in trying to solve the problems in this area. And it looks like we will have a final date at some point, and that's what I want to look at. We've talked about the accumulative effects of windmills. The residents in the new houses in Bridge House Hill have basically been left with a compound with a bing inside of it in front of their new homes. There is also water in there, Hessian fences down. We don't know how deep the water is. The children have been breaching this. I realise that all these things have been being addressed and ongoing. And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate indeed, that Connect Modular went into administration, which has left us with these. However, there was problems long before they went into administration with the state of this site. And I understand that the bing will not be being removed in the near future because there could be a phase 2 to this building project. But I think that's a great deal to ask of the people that live there, that they have to sit with this compound in front of their beautiful new houses, and the people further down the hill have to look up to the bing. So I would like to know if there is a date planned for the removal of this compound, and if any of the other officers have anything else to say on the situation, which has been a sad and sorry state. Thank you. Oh, and can I just, sorry, I forgot to add, a dangerous state. We've had children breaking the Hessian fencing, and there is ponds of water in there, and we don't know how deep they are. And this, I don't normally say this, but this is from all 3 ward councillors. We're very concerned about this situation. Thank you.
At the moment, we don't have any particular dates for when it will be taken away. We have in recent conversations, I think, with the developer, and that's where the kind of intention to retain these things and to progress with the next phase of application was explained to us. So at the moment, there is live planning consent in terms of the planning permission in principle to allow them to bring forward the detailed scheme for the next phase. So at the moment, we don't see there being a clear planning power to require them to take that away because it remains with a consent. But I know the officers are obviously meeting with you next week, and I think there'll probably be a more careful look at some of the bing and the water as well, although in a side conversation with an enforcement officer, I don't think that water is very deep, is our understanding, but hopefully there'll be a wee bit more clarity brought next week. But I don't have the answer probably that you're looking for in terms of, I don't think at this point in time we can force them to take anything away, and at the moment there's no indication that the developer wants to do that, but the developer is aware of the concerns, and we obviously at least have a contact point to be able to reach out to them. The health and safety executive are also relevant here as well, and can be contacted. It's a lot of the what you're describing to me is kind of out with the planning powers, and probably powers of quite a bit of the council, but the developer has obligations on themselves. If they retain a site compound, they need to make sure that that's secured and safe, and particularly if it's not being used on a day-to-day basis. So there might be other avenues to explore or other bodies that could put pressure on that. But from a planning perspective, in terms of where that site's at, we don't probably have strong powers to help you in that. But I know the officers will speak to you about that next week in a bit more detail.
Come back in.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks very much for that, David. I do want to note that there has been developments, there has been improvements, and things that we've asked to be addressed have been addressed, and there seems to be far better communication going on now. I do want, as I have the mic, I will absolutely say that, but to have a bing, and it is a bing, there's no denying it, sitting in front of your house, and it absolutely spoils the rest of the development and impacts on a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other Councillor Cowan?
Thanks, Chair. And I think David touched on what my question was. What powers do we have, to escalate events? I appreciate you say it's a live application, and Councillor Maitland has mentioned the site visit next week. But if a potential route is health and safety executive, it's good to be aware that that's one of the potential future options. Because sometimes these applications can be open and live for a considerable period of time, and if the community does have health and safety concerns, especially if young children are using that area as a playground, and I appreciate the enforcement officer might say that the water's not deep, but how deep does the water need to be before it can be a real risk and hazard? So that's helpful information, David. Thank you.
Anything further? No. So the recommendations on page 122, paragraph 3, we're happy. Thank you very much. That Robert, can we stop the recording, please?